My name is Corinne Delaberto. I'm the Executive Director of Community Law in Action, also known as CLIA, and it's wonderful to have all of you here today, and I thank you for spending your afternoon with us. I want to kick us off by just thanking several people. First, I wanted to mention our wonderful sponsors today that we're being supported by two visionary sponsors, the law firm of Saul, Ewing, Arnstein, and Lear, and also Morgan State University. So thank you very much for your support. Our champion sponsors are the law firm of Wilson Elzer, the law offices of Evan K. Fallenberg, the law firm of Dempsey and Delaberto, and the law firm of Brown and Barron. Thank you very much for your support today. Now, our advocate sponsors are Zuckerman Spader, Womble Dickinson, and McGuire Woods. Thank you for your support. And our friend of CLIA sponsors, the Campaign for Youth Justice. We do our juvenile justice reform work in partnership with them. Miles and Stockbridge, Maryland Legal Aid, Russell Insurance Group. Sorry, guys. All right, the glasses are going on. I tried to work it through here. Mr. James Astrakhan. And I'm not able to see the last one. Okay. And the warehouse, yes. Thank you very much for your support. Appreciate it. We have a very full program for you today, and I'd like to open it up by welcoming some very special and honored guests. First, we have our wonderful Mayor of Baltimore, Mayor Catherine Pugh. Thank you so much for spending time with us today. We also have our CEO of Baltimore City Schools, Dr. Sonia Santelises. Thank you for being here. We also have Delegate Brooke Learman, who represents the 46th District. We're very happy to have her here as well. Thank you. And also representing the office of Senator Chris Van Hollen is Queen Wafour. We're very happy to have you. Thank you. And one person I'd like to mention is the founder of Community Law in Action, Terry Hickey. He's here as well today. He left very big shoes for me to fill, and I'm still filling them after 5 years. Thanks for being here, Terry. We'd like to kick off by first inviting Mayor Pugh to say a few words of greeting. Thank you.
Before I begin, let me present this Mayor's salute to the Community Law in Action. A salute for all of the work that you all do. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Appreciate it.
I know you all have a wonderful guest speaker this afternoon, the Honorable Shirley Watts. Thank you, Dr. Santelises, for all that you do. You've announced that Delegate Brooke Learman is here. And let me just say this to you all. It is so important, the work that you all are doing, because what we've got to do is inspire our young people to their greatness, and that's a part of what this organization does. And I just want to share with you all that we have 16,500 young people who needed to go to work this summer, which required me to raise almost $20 million to make sure that that happened. I'm still about $3 million short, so if anybody out there got that $3 million. But the organizations that you're saluting today, I was so proud to see the Orchid Kids on here. I got a chance to do a little drumming with them last week. They are just awesome. Raquel Whiting Gilmer, Alfonso May, the Mentoring Mentors Program, the Visual Arts High School, Augusta Falls Visual Arts High School, Coley, you all give them a round of applause. Brittany Young, D360, and one of my favorite organizations in this city, Ceasefire. Nothing is more important to me right now than reducing violence in our city. And we do this not just for ourselves individually, because we want our young people to have a future that they can believe in. We know that there are young people out here who are looking for great and positive things to do. And every day we're trying to figure out how do we make sure that that happens. Whether it is providing them with a job, or providing them with a mentor, or providing the opportunity to play with our orchestra, it doesn't get much better than that. But these are the things that we do to inspire our young people to their greatness. And I made Baltimore City Community College free. And I'll never forget one of the notes that I got from someone who said to me that, we can't invest in young people going to college because it'd be CCC, because guess what, they don't finish college. And they're urban youth. My response back to them was, quote unquote, I was an urban youth. Yes. And I hold a master's degree in business administration. Oh, yeah. And it's not one proposition against another, it's all of us working together. That's how we move our city forward. Some may choose to invest in skill development for our young people, and that's okay. Some of our young people go off to the armed forces, and that too is okay. But if you could have saw the faces of the mothers when I walked through Gilmore Homes who yelled at me, thank you for making Baltimore City Community College free. Or you could have seen the young people who ran out of the classrooms at Renaissance Academy and other schools where a lot of young people don't even aspire to go to college, who said to me, I'm going to Baltimore City Community College free. Or when I picked up my groceries at the grocery store and I'm walking out and the young lady at the counter leaned over packing bags and said, I'm going to Baltimore City Community College free. Last week we did the first ever youth jobs fair for our graduating seniors, because we want to make sure that our young people get every option possible to be successful. What you all do with this organization and the salutes that you're giving today are providing options for our young people. They have a future. This is a great city. But again, it's how we work together. I tell people there's nothing about me that's perfect, but I can tell you one thing. My commitment, my vision for moving this city forward is pretty close to it. Because I believe in you, I believe in our young people, I believe in the future of our city. And I'm so grateful to you all for inspiring, encouraging, mentoring, pushing, pulling, trying to make sure that we get to where we need to go. So thank you. Thank you for your work. Thank you for your inspiration. Thank you for lifting our city and moving it forward. God bless you all. Thank you.
I'd like to invite my colleague and board member, Kalia Plunkett, up to the podium. And before we get started with our keynote, I'd like to invite Dr. Santelises. Would you like to share some welcoming thoughts with us? Thank you.
Fine. And I won't take very long up here, because I think, the mayor has set the pace, and I get the advantage of sitting next to the guest speaker as well as one of the honorees. So what that really means is I need to move out of the way fairly quickly. I just want to say briefly, community law in action. Thank you for what you are doing for our young people in Baltimore City. And I just want to highlight that in action is what I think makes this organization so powerful. It is law in action. It is young people getting the chance to see what their participation, their leadership, their voice in their own communities actually does, the impact that it has. And within city schools, we are shifting the culture to be less about how do we get kids to just stay in seats and keep quiet and fill out blank pages, and more about how are we preparing young people to lead? How are we preparing them with their own voice, right? Sharpened, ready with the tools of learning to be able to take over the reins of this city and lead the direction in a productive path. So as I am fond of saying, when I am too old and I am too tired, I can sit down and know that our city is in good hands and that our future is secure. So I want to thank Community Law in Action for putting the action in the law and making our young people in Baltimore City the centerpiece of the work that you do. So thank you for everything, and I will turn it back over.
Hello, everyone, and thank you. Thank you so much for your wonderful remarks. I actually watched a 2011 TED Talk from you, and what you just said is really in keeping with the goal of Community Law in Action. You talked about leadership and preparing the next generation of leaders. So we thank you once again for coming to support us. We do appreciate it. Hello, everyone. I see so many smiling faces out there. Before I introduce our keynote speaker, I wanted to acknowledge Sheldon Laskin. He is a candidate for District 11 for the State Senate. We thank you for coming out this afternoon. It is my honor to introduce our keynote speaker for this afternoon, Judge Shirley Watts from the Maryland Court of Appeals. We are really, really, truly grateful. Judge Shirley Watts is a proud native Baltimorean, born in Baltimore City and raised in West Baltimore. She was appointed Associate Judge of the Court of Appeals of Maryland in July 2013. Prior to her appointment to the Court of Appeals, Judge Watts served for 2.5 years as an Associate Judge of the Court of Special Appeals of Maryland from January 2011 to July 2013. Prior to her appointment to the Court of Special Appeals, Judge Watts served for 9 years as an Associate Judge for the Circuit Court for Baltimore City from February 2002 to January 2011. Judge Watts also served as the Chief Administrative Law Judge for the Baltimore Office of Hearings and Appeals at the Social Security Administration from 1999 to 2002, and as an administrative law judge as well, as an administrative law judge with the Office of Hearings and Appeals at the Social Security Administration in California and also in Pennsylvania from 1997 to 1999. Judge Watts, she has such an illustrious career, right? I need you to mentor me. We'll talk after. You also, Judge Watts, she served as an assistant federal public defender and supervisory assistant public defender for the Office of the Federal Public Defender for the District of Maryland from 1988 to 1997. Judge Watts served as an adjunct professor at the Catholic University of America, Columbus School of Law from 1993 to 1997. Judge Watts also served as an assistant state's attorney for the Office of the State's Attorney for Baltimore City from 1984 to 1988. Judge Watts, as we can see why, of course, she's a recipient of numerous awards, including the Daily Record's Maryland Leadership in Law Award, the University of Baltimore School of Law Black Students Association's Extraordinary Judicial Service Award, and the National Coalition of 100 Black Women Baltimore Metropolitan Chapter's Torchbearer Award. Judge Watts received her Bachelor's of Arts degree from Howard University, and she received her JD from Rutgers University School of Law, Camden. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming our keynote speaker for this afternoon, Judge Shirley Watts.
you for that very gracious introduction. When you hear your background, sometimes it makes you feel old or, or like you've been around for a while. But good afternoon. I am honored to address CLIA, Community Law in Action, an organization that has done so much for so many young people. And it's great to see that so many people could be here today, including our mayor and leaders from so many different areas in the community. I've met so many wonderful people already this morning. Congratulations are in order for the recipients of today's awards: Raquel Whiting-Gilmer, Brittany Young, Alfonso Mayo, Coley Tangela, and the Baltimore Ceasefire Movement. Congratulations to each of you. Well done. Your work does not go unnoticed. Founded in 1998, CLIA has become an essential part of the fabric of our city. With its mission of developing young people to become leaders and enhancing positive community change, CLIA has influenced the lives of countless of our young citizens. This is in no small part due to the contributions of its board and staff. And today I want to personally thank the board and staff of CLIA who make its work possible. I'd like any board members and staff who are here to please stand and be recognized. Thank you so much. Your work is so important. Consistent with CLIA's message, today I want to talk about young people, young voices effecting change in our society. As we are all aware, these are trying times for our nation, our state, and indeed Baltimore City. A confluence of circumstances has resulted in a perfect storm of events, leading to an unprecedented demand for transparency and accountability in law enforcement actions, the engagement of youth, and, frankly, a demand for change. In my opinion, there are numerous ways that young people can affect change, and indeed have historically in the past affected change in our country. Today, we are seeing the rise of inspirational young people seeking to change the world. This is reminiscent of the young people who were on the front lines of the battle for civil rights in the 1960s, and the young people who protested the Vietnam War in the 70s. Recently, students from all over our country walked out of school in an example of young people using their voices for change. March 14th was the date of this year's first Enough National School Walkout. The walkout took place exactly 1 month after the shootings in Parkland, Florida on February 14th. On March 14th, almost 1 million students, imagine that, from about 3,000 schools across the country walked out of class at 10 a.m. for 17 minutes to raise awareness about the issues of school safety and the impact of gun violence. Perhaps some of you in this room were even among them. What a powerful, powerful occasion it was. There were students gathered in Washington, D.C., who observed 17 minutes of silence, one for each of the 17 people who were killed in the Parkland shootings. The students used social media to organize. This demonstrated their proficiency and engagement with the powerful tools of Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube, through which mass numbers of people can be reached instantly. Later, during the same month, in another example of young people seeking change, on March 24th, the March for Our Lives took place. Hundreds of thousands of people, mostly teenagers, marched for gun control in Washington, D.C. Planning for the event was spearheaded by students from the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida. More than 800 protests took place in different cities across the country. Indeed, there were demonstrations in every single state, and it was one of the largest protests in American history. Young people, students, protesting guns and saying, "Enough is enough." And there was a second national school walkout on April 20th. Again, young people demanded change. April 20th was the 19th anniversary of the Columbine High School massacre in 1999. Now, although Columbine happened before some of you in this room were even born, I think there's a good chance that you've heard of it. 2 teenagers brought guns to the Columbine High School in Colorado, and 15 people were killed. So it was entirely appropriate that the anniversary of Columbine was chosen for the April 20th walkouts. As the events in Parkland demonstrate, 19 years later, the need for change is even greater. In addition to student walkouts and protests, another very, very powerful way for young people to effect change is when you turn 18, register to vote and actually vote. Let me say that again. When you turn 18, register to vote and actually vote. Yes. In 2008, approximately 51% of people who were then between the ages of 18 and 29 voted in the general election. And in 2008, the majority of these young voters, 66% of the people between 18 and 29 years of age who voted for President Barack Obama. And what a powerful change occurred. Indeed, President Obama, our 44th president, has expressed a strong belief in the power of young people to make a difference. President Obama has stated, "Young people like you have to be the ones to lead us forward." Getting involved in civic and community organizations such as CLEA is definitely a way to effect change. In Baltimore and across the country, CLEA and other organizations are modern additions to our nation's rich history of advocacy and change sought by young people. Indeed, in the 1960s, as I mentioned, students were on the front line of the fight for civil rights. During the civil rights era, students formed an organization specifically designed to give young people more of a voice in the civil rights movement. This organization was the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, better known as SNCC. SNCC focused on organizing sit-ins throughout the South to protest segregation. SNCC was formed by students in April 1960 at a meeting in Shaw University in North Carolina. Shaw University happens to be the oldest HBCU in the southern part of the United States. It was formed in 1865, right after the Civil War. In 1961, a man named Stokely Carmichael, who was a future leader of SNCC and who was only 20 years old at the time, became one of the nation's first Freedom Riders. And of course, Freedom Riders were civil rights activists who rode buses and trains throughout the South to protest segregation. Well, in 1961, as a college freshman, Mr. Carmichael participated in freedom rides right here along US Route 40 between Baltimore and Washington, D.C. Just 5 years later, at the age of 25, Stokely Carmichael became the leader of SNCC. the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. Stokely Carmichael serves as an example of what a young person can accomplish when seeking change. Another example of young people or a young person affecting change can be seen right here in Baltimore in the life of former Chief Judge Robert M. Bell. Many of you may have heard of him. Chief Judge Bell was the first and only African-American Chief Judge of the Maryland Court of Appeals. Chief Judge Bell did not wait, however, until he became a judge to begin affecting change. Chief Judge Bell's records of accomplishment began when he was a teenager. In 1960, when Chief Judge Bell was 16 years old and a student at Dunbar High School, he was involved in advocacy that would change civil rights history. On June 16, 1960, the Chief Judge and several students from Dunbar and what was then Morgan State College entered the segregated Hooper's restaurant in Baltimore City and asked to be served. They were denied service. The manager even turned off the lights and the air conditioning to discourage Chief Judge Bell and his companions. The young people, including Chief Judge Bell, were charged with trespassing and found guilty and ordered to pay a fine of $10. Although that may not sound like much of a fine, $10 in 1960 would be worth about $80 today. Aided by legendary civil rights advocates Juanita Jackson Mitchell and Thurgood Marshall, Chief Judge Bell and his companions appealed the finding of guilt. When the Court of Appeals of Maryland, my court, the very court that Chief Judge Bell would eventually come to lead, upheld the conviction, he appealed to the United States Supreme Court. And remember, he's 16. The Supreme Court vacated the judgment of conviction and remanded the case. The Supreme Court observed that since the date the Court of Appeals affirmed the convictions, Maryland had enacted laws abolishing the crime for which Chief Judge Bell and his companions had been convicted. New Maryland laws accorded Chief Judge Bell and his companions a right to be served at the Hooper's restaurant and made the conduct of the restaurant in refusing service based on race unlawful. The case is Bell versus State of Maryland. It is cited 378 U.S. 226. It was decided on June 22nd, 1964. This 1964 case became an important decision regarding civil rights and public accommodations. In this way, Chief Judge Bell, as a teenager, just like many of you in this room, as a young person right here in Baltimore, he became one of the many young people who affected change during the 60s in the civil rights movement. In yet another example of young people affecting change, during the 70s, young people protested the Vietnam War. Between 1965 and 1972, more than 1.7 million young American men had been drafted into the military to fight the war. Most of the draftees were in their late teens or early 20s, and they didn't come from wealthy or affluent backgrounds. The draft inspired countless young people to protest against the Vietnam War. One of the most famous anti-draft slogans was popularized by none other than Stokely Carmichael, the leader of SNCC. I will refrain from quoting the slogan word for word, but slightly modified, the slogan went like this: "Heck no, we won't go." Thanks in part to young people's strong opposition during the Vietnam War, no Americans have been drafted into the military since 1972. So as you can see, young people have historically provided the means and the assistance for change in our society. It has become critical, now perhaps more than ever, for young voices to join the demand for justice and for change. As someone who has dedicated my entire career to public service, CLEA's work is of particular interest to me. I believe it is incumbent upon all citizens, young and old, from the legal profession and other fields, to help create pathways to change and improvement in the administration of justice and in our society in general. So what do we mean when we speak of effecting change? What does that mean? On my end, it certainly means striving toward creating a judiciary that is transparent, efficient, and most importantly, open to all. Access to the court system must be readily obtainable for all of our citizens. Our culture must shift such that the concept of access to justice permeates our thinking. For your part, whether you pursue a legal career or work in another field, I encourage all young people to continue to attempt to effect change. And I hope that you will not be discouraged when change seems difficult or perhaps even impossible. Supreme Court Justice Louis Brandeis once said, "Most of the things worth doing in the world had been declared impossible before they were done." And most importantly, the time for change is now. As President Barack Obama once famously and powerfully said, "Change will not come if we wait for some other person or if we wait for some other time. We are the ones we've been waiting for. We are the change that we seek." Yes. That's right. In conclusion, I note that the commitment to change displayed by young people today is vital. Although we are faced with many challenges in the goal of achieving justice and fairness in our judicial system and in society as a whole, the work done and the culture promoted by CLEA demonstrates that we are making strides toward the goal of listening to all members of society. Thank you so much, and God bless.
Thank you so much, Judge Watts. I'm so happy that you mentioned Judge Bell. He was actually our speaker, our keynote speaker at the first CLEA luncheon 5 years ago. So it's reminding me that we need to get him back with our young people to spend some time with them. Thank you very much for being here today.